Hey everyone, this is going to be a quick video on how to set up Anki for SIU specific decks as well as for AnKing, which is going to be more boards focused flashcards. So I created a video last year for this. It's a lot longer, it's about like an hour long, with a lot more detail about how to use Anki, more detail about the software settings, how to create cards and whatnot. So if you have any questions or you just want a more detailed, in-depth look, I'd highly recommend that video as far as creating cards or just getting a better feel and understanding for what Anki is and how to use it. But with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in to how to set it up. So you can see here, you have the Anki software. I have a Mac, so things are going to look a little bit different on my end than if you have like a Windows computer, but I'll try to kind of address as many differences as I can. Really, the main thing is going to come down to this toolbar up here. So Mac users, you're going to have the toolbar for like your settings and stuff up in the top left. For Windows users, it's actually just going to be integrated, as far as I can remember, into the actual Anki application. So like your file, edit, view, tools, whatnot, that's all going to be like on the actual application software itself. But yeah, that's going to be the main difference really. Otherwise, the settings are pretty uniform. But let's go ahead and kind of look at the interface real quick. So here I just have a little tester profile that I can show you guys how to set things up. So here you have your decks. This is going to be like your home page. This is where you see all of your flashcard decks, any ones that you create, the SIU in-house Anki decks, as well as the AnKing decks as well. And then if you want to go ahead and add a card, you would click this button right here and it pulls up this little pop-up where you can go ahead and create a card. There's a lot of kind of confusing stuff here with types of notes and what deck you want to add and tags and whatnot. Like I said, all that's in the more detailed video. I won't go into depth with that. I go very in depth on how to create cards and how to create image occlusion cards as well. So if you want to have an image of something anatomy related, for example, you can just cover it up, and instead of having like words or text as a flashcard, you can just have an image and it'll occlude certain parts of the image for you to go ahead and use for recall. But anyway, like I said, that's in the detailed video. Otherwise, you have this browse option here. You can click that, and that gives you a better idea of this kind of file editor, file browser here for the flashcards. So there's a lot of little settings. We're not going to worry about all of these here. You can kind of explore them on your own time, but basically on your sidebar here on the left, you're going to be able to pull things up and separate cards out based on certain categories or modifiers. So if you have some cards flagged with a certain color, you can go ahead and separate them by that. For AnkiHub, you can see like which cards were modified after sync, whatever. Like I said, this is stuff that you're not going to mess with on a day-to-day. Really, where you're going to be living is around this tags area, and I'll show you more of that here in a little bit. This little what's it called, kind of toolbar up here, you might not have it on your end. This is what we call an add-on. So you can add like additional packages and modifications to the Anki software to just have cool things that you can just make personal for your Anki setup. So some people I know will have like this advanced toolbar. Other people have like a review heat map, kind of like a streak program where it shows like how many days in a row you studied and stuff like that, which is really nice to kind of gamify the studying experience. But this is your file browser. This is where you're going to see like all of your cards. You're going to be able to edit them, categorize, organize, all of that. But we'll go ahead and take a look at that here more in detail in a second. Otherwise, your stats button here, this is going to give you statistics about your cards. So it'll show you like how many cards you've studied today, how many do you have coming up, a little calendar, right? It'll show you how many reviews you've done. It's just a nice way to kind of look at some statistics about your studying and kind of keep up with that. Card ease hourly breakdown. This is all other stats that you can look at. It's not essential, but it's nice to just kind of take a look at if you want to. And then you can separate it by flashcard deck or collection. You can look at the last 12 months, whatever it may be. You're not really going to be living here a whole bunch. The sync button right here, this is what you can use to basically take your flashcards on the go. So if you download the Anki app on your iPhone, iPad, whatever it is, right? Basically, you can go ahead and create an account by signing up using this link right here. through a platform they have called Anki Web. And so what that'll do is it'll be able to sync your cards, on the go. So you can pull it up on the app. And if you're working on your computer one day, you go to the gym, you want to go ahead and work on your Anki flashcards there. They'll all be synced together. So you can go ahead and create an account for that. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not going to sign in, but you kind of get the gist for that, for syncing. You see this Amboss QBank. This is one of those add-ons that I have installed. So these are things that can like modify, enhance, personalize the experience. So I can kind of separate out the cards by, which questions I want to do. This, don't worry about this now whatsoever. Just pretend it's not here. But otherwise, like, here's where you'd see like your decks, right? You would see how many new cards you have, how many that you're still learning, right? And then how many are due. So how many reviews you've done, and or how many reviews you have or you need to do. And so the way that Anki works real quick, obviously, is that, once you've learned a concept or you've gone through like, a chapter, a topic or whatever, you pull up the corresponding flashcards, you study those. That's how you retain things for the long term, right? And so you'll have some new flashcards you do. Once you open them up and you start going through them, they become learning cards. So these are the ones that you're still learning. Once you've matured them, that you say you want to push those cards out to like, all right, I don't want to see this until like 3-4 days later. That's when they become due cards, quote unquote, right? So those are going to be your reviews. So if I start today and look at a card, right, and I push it out to, let's say 4 days, and I'll show you here that in a second. Basically what will happen is that in 4 days, that card pops up in my due section, and then I'm able to take a look at those cards and then review them. So anyway, that's that for the software here. You can create a deck. You can click import file to import new Anki decks, and then get shared is basically browsing Anki Web. Some people will share different decks and stuff. You're really not going to worry about this either. But yeah, so let's go ahead and kind of take a look on how to get started with downloading decks. So I have all the links to everything that you see here in the description. So you're going to go to the SIU AMA resources drive that we shared with you guys. You're going to click on AMA, or actually, my bad, not AMA. We're going to go to Anki Set-Up and all. And then you're going to go to Anki Set-Up and decks for M1s. And then you're going to download this Y1-current APKG, right? So that's your Anki package. You're going to go ahead and click download for that. I have mine ready right here. So wherever your download's going to be, you can go ahead and double click on it, right? Whether it's on your desktop or whatever, you import. Don't mess around with like the learning progress, deck presets, none of that. So you're going to go ahead and import that. You're going to see a bunch of like media files, notes, all this stuff here. It's just all the images, flashcards that we have. It takes a little second here to install. And then once we have that, right, we're going to see all of our Anki decks for the in-house lectures, right? So you can see there's 13,000 total here, right? So it's going to look overwhelming here, but I'll just minimize things. So these are your Y1, your year one decks. And so you have your CRR unit, your NMB, and your ERG unit. Let's start with CRR. You kind of open that, and they have the same structure. You're going to have your anatomy cards, right? We have one for every lab. For CRR and NMB, we have associated symptoms, which is doctoring, diagnoses, flashcards for that. Basic science is going to be every week with their corresponding lectures, those flashcards for them. So you're going to see that under basic sciences. And then your histology here is for those labs. You're going to see the flashcards there too. So same kind of structure for ERG and NMB. I'm not going to go through those, but you might be questioning, we saw 13,000 notes, right? Why does it only say 20? Well, we'll get into that here in a second, because there is a default limit of how many cards you can see whenever you install something new. And that default limit is maximum 20 cards a day. We'll go ahead and adjust that here in a second, but that gets you with all of your in-house Anki decks, right? These are what you're going to need to pass your exams, right, in terms of having something that you can use for long-term retention and active recall. So those are the decks here, right? Now we can go ahead and look at the Anki or AnKing and AnkiHub deck. So AnkiHub is just an online platform that houses the AnKing deck. We'll go ahead and talk about that in our Anki meeting, but basically the AnKing deck is the massive deck, 30, 40 something thousand cards, whatever it may be. That's for all of your entire step exams. Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3 for your USMLE boards, right? So AnkiHub, this is the online platform for it. Basically, what they did was they took that deck that they had been perfecting over a long period of time and then just put it on this online platform to be continuously updated. So you'll go ahead, sign up for an account, whatever. The caveat is that it's $5 a month. The workaround is that you can just pay the $5 once, cancel the subscription, and then you have the deck. The downside to that would be that you don't consistently get the updates. So let's say if there's a mistake on cards, or if they add a new card, or if they add something new, or update images or whatever, you're not going to get those updates unless you pay the monthly fee. But realistically, this deck has been in use for years and years and years. The version 11 of the deck, right, that has set people up for extreme success in the past, and they've since fixed a million different things with V12 or version 12. So realistically, you should probably be fine if you just pay the $5 once and then not pay it again and just have that deck. But I just prefer to pay it monthly just so I make sure that I'm getting, any mistakes and stuff updated, because I don't want to study, wrong content. But once you go ahead and sign up for the account, right, you pay the $5, whatever it is, you'll kind of see this side of the account here, which is you go ahead and explore, right, what decks you want to quote unquote subscribe to. So if we search AnKing, right, the step deck, it brings us to AnKing MCAT, AnKing step deck. So we're going to go ahead and subscribe to the AnKing step deck, right? Go ahead and subscribe to that. Boom. So that's good. And then I can see under my decks, never mind, not my decks, but here on their explore page, you have your subscribe decks. So that's good. And then, so you have your AnKing step deck here. What you want to go ahead and do is click tools, right? And we're going to go ahead and click the add-ons button. So remember, if you're on Windows, your toolbar is going to be within the app. But on Mac, you're going to click the tools button, click add-ons, right? And then click get add-ons, and you input this code right here. This is the AnkiHub, add-on that allows you to kind of sync with this online platform. I've already got it installed, so I'm going to cancel this because you can see it's installed right here. And then what you can go ahead and do is sign into AnkiHub, right? Go ahead and do that here. So now I'm signed in, and on the AnkiHub little toolbar here, right, which you can also pull this up, like I said, on Windows, you'll be able to find it. What I'll do is I'll sync with AnkiHub. And so it says now you have new AnkiHub decks to install, and we want to go ahead and install that, right? And it says use recommended deck settings. That's totally fine. We can go ahead and install that, and we'll adjust the settings here in a little bit. It takes a hot minute to download because remember, it is a ton of cards. But yeah, so once you have that installed, we'll go ahead and take a look about, how to set it up, just separating the cards and adjusting the settings. Because like I said, it's step 1, step 2, and step 3 cards. Step 2 and 3, not relevant now. Even step 1, borderline, not relevant now. Your main goal should be focused on the in-house lectures to pass year 1. Year 2 is going to be more step and board focused. So if you want to, and if you're feeling like it, that you want to go ahead and look through AnKing cards, right, by all means, go ahead and do it as long as you have time for it and you're able to manage it. But you can see here, the AnKing step deck is ready to study. Good. So you might think, cool, there's 36 cards. You said there's 30 something thousand, right? This is kind of the same issue here that I was running into, right, with the in-house decks. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this little gear symbol. We're going to go to options, and you can see here for your daily limits, right, this is what we want to go ahead and adjust. Your new cards per day and your maximum reviews per day. So You can mess around with this if you want to, but the recommended setting is to just kind of put this like unlimited, right? I want to be able to see however many cards I want to, right? If I choose to do less than that, I'll do less than that, but just so I have the freedom to do as many as I want. So you're going to set those at these numbers right here. And for any of these settings, if you're a little confused about what they mean, still, like I said, I'll explain them. But if you're confused, you can kind of click on them and it'll give you a description of what this setting is. So that's really helpful as well. But yeah, so we'll go ahead and do is kind of go through these settings real quick to make sure everything is set up properly. So like I said, we're going to keep it kind of infinite. We're going to ignore these two settings here. And then we're going to drop down to FSRS, right? We make sure that that's enabled. I think by default it might be disabled, but you want to make sure you go ahead and do that because it just makes the rest of the settings far easier. It's a specific algorithm for how the cards are spaced out, and it's new, it's improved, and it's much better. It just kind of does things in the background for you without you having to kind of mess around with even more settings, because that's what they had before. But anyway, for your new cards, your learning steps, it just tells you, this just means like, you know, how much time you want to note for each option. So for Anki, whenever you pull up a card, right, let's say, actually I'll go back and let's open my Y1 deck and I'll go ahead and study now. So you can see I have this card, I'll click my space bar and I see here these options again, hard, good, and easy, right? So those learning steps are exactly what I'm trying to define as the time intervals for each of these buttons. So if I put like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20, then that means for my again button, it's going to be 5 minutes. My hard is going to be 10, good is going to be 15, easy is going to be 20. So that's the gist for the learning steps, right? Oops, clicked on Anki there. We'll go ahead and go back, right? That's kind of what you're doing with the settings here for the options. So we're going to go ahead and the recommended is to just keep it at 15 minutes because then that's how the algorithm does its work, the FSRS. It's able to kind of take into account, okay, maybe, you know, he spent, you know, more time on this card over another. Maybe we should space out the easier cards farther apart and make sure that the harder cards, you know, I see them more frequently, for example. So I would just keep it at 15 minutes. That's just going to make the easy or the try again button 15 minutes, and then the other 3 or 4 buttons, right? Those are just going to be left up to the algorithm. It can seem a little like scary not knowing how long the other intervals are going to be, but everyone's kind of had experience with the FSRS algorithm. It's worked great. It spaces things out based on you know, your performance, whether you get the cards right or not. So it's personal to you, right? And I think this is the best way to leave it. Your insertion order, what this means is that basically like, what's it called? For the new cards, what order are they brought up to you? So you want to keep it at sequential. You want the oldest cards first, right? That just makes sense. However the cards were created, you want to keep it sequential. Your lapses, this is when you get a card wrong, right? What's the default like reset intervals? And so we're just going to keep it at 15 minutes. And that's totally fine, right? It's going to be the same thing. Your leech threshold, that recommended is kind of around 8. Leeches are cards that you've gotten continuously wrong. So the threshold just means like, okay, you know, I have room to maneuver. I can get this card wrong 8 times before the system notes it as a leech, which is nice because then, you know, here under leech action, it'll tag it, right? That's what we want. So it'll kind of organize and categorize that card that you continuously got wrong, right, as a leech. Those are the ones that I need to maybe take a look at. I've somehow just continuously got them wrong. Maybe I should focus on this topic a little bit more. So you can change it if you want to 4. I think that was the default. 8 just leaves a little bit more room for error. But yeah, oops. Go ahead and make that 8 again. Display order, right? These should be fine. New card gather order. You want to organize the cards in ascending position, right, based on the order that they were gathered. So this is similar to that sequential setting from before, so we want to keep that. Your new card sort order, same thing. You want to order the new cards in the order that they were gathered. Your new /review order, what this means is that it's asking you basically, when do you want to see new cards versus review cards? So I would only want to see new content after I finish the stuff that I need to review. This only makes sense, right? So you're going to keep this as show after reviews. For your interday learning/review order, what this means is that, okay, if I studied 20 cards the night before, but I never, spaced them out. I never said like, oh, this was a good card or an easy card. If I just kept saying that it was hard or that I needed to try again, right? If I clicked try again or hard, they remain as learning cards. And so if I never grabbed those 20 cards and noted them as good or easy, right, then those 20 cards are going to carry over to the next day. And so this is just asking me like, okay, do I want to see the cards that I haven't finished from last night learning before my reviews or not? The preference is to just keep them before your reviews, right? Because if you didn't finish something the night before, you want to finish that, then your reviews, then your new. So that's the recommended for this. And then your review sort order. So for your reviews, there's a lot of options here. You want to mess around with this, by all means, go ahead. But the default recommended is going to be due date, then random. So it shows you the cards that you need to review based on when they're due, right? You don't want to see something that was super easy for you first, and then, for something that was harder, you don't see it until much later. I want to see the hard stuff now because I need to focus on that. And the easy stuff, that's why it's called easy. It's spaced out because I've already gotten the hang of it. So yeah, that's kind of how you're going to keep your display order. For your FSRS, this is really nice. The desired retention thing, I think for SIU decks, it should be around 90%, right? Because that's where you're going to need to pass, right? You want to make sure that you're keeping on top of your content and retaining it. For AnKing in particular, right, you can see here default is going to be your settings for the rest of the decks. AnKing is going to be used for specifically AnKing. So you can have two separate settings if you want, but realistically, I think retention of about 90% is fair because you want to, make sure that you're retaining as much as you can, right? So it holds you to a higher standard. You can drop it, lower to 85 if you want. Basically, what this does is that if you tell it you want to remember more, it's going to bring those cards up more frequently, right? In general, like you're just going to have a higher daily card load. If you say that I don't want to retain as much, it's going to make things a little bit simpler. It's going to space them out more. You're not going to see as many cards every day. So that's the desired retention. I would keep it at 90. I think that's pretty safe. It's worked for a lot of people, and that's totally fine. Don't mess around with the FSRS parameters. That is beyond me and a lot of other people. So let's not mess with that. Let's not mess with any of these other settings. The AnKing has a more detailed video describing what you can do with these settings if you want to mess with it. I highly recommend against that. But yeah, and then burying new siblings versus review siblings. So if you've used Anki before, or if you haven't, I'll just give you a quick rundown for this. Basically, you can have what are called sister cards, right? So let's say you have one flashcard with multiple fill in the blanks. So you could say like the blank is the blank of the cell. So the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You can have two blanks right there, right? And so realistically, if I see the first flashcard, which is the blank is the powerhouse of the cell, right? I'm going to now know, once I've studied this card, that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. I only want to see that card today. I don't also want to see the mitochondria is the blank of the cell, because I already understand now that it's the powerhouse of the cell. If you bury these siblings, right, siblings or sister cards, right, that just means that it only shows you one fill in the blank out of a multi fill in the blank card. So if you have like a flashcard that has like 6 fill in the blanks or something, right, it's only going to show you one of those. And then maybe the next day it shows you that other fill in the blank. The third day it gives you the third fill in the blank, and so on and so forth. I feel like that's nice, especially when you have cards with more than one fill in the blank, to just be able to kind of get more exposure to the same concept over and over again, instead of having all of the cards at once. If you want to turn this off, by all means, go ahead and do it. It just also helps to reduce the card load on a daily basis, because sometimes realistically you only have like 50 unique cards, But because there's so many like fill in the blanks for one flashcard, it might end up actually being like 200, because there's like more than one sibling card. So burying those new sibling cards is really nice to reduce daily card load. And then it just gives you more, exposure to that same concept over the next like few days, right? So the content kind of front and back. So like I said, today I understand that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Tomorrow I'm like, okay, what's the powerhouse of the cell? I'm not sure. Now I figure out that it's mitochondria. So I kind of figured out both ways. But yeah, same thing for review siblings. Like, once you have more than one of those cards, the siblings in your review stack, right? I realistically, probably just want to go ahead and review one sibling at a time. So like I said, it just helps with multi-day exposure of the same content, over and over again. So you learn it more than one way. Same thing for the interday, right? We'll just keep that as well. Audio, don't mess around with audio. We'll keep that. Timers, I do not mess with timers. I think this is very anxiety inducing. We leave that. We don't mess with that at all. Auto advance, same thing here. These are just an option for like if you want to automate like you going through the cards instead of having to click the space bar or click your Anki remote. Highly recommend against that, because it's just you don't have any control of how, well, let's say if you want to spend more time on this card or less time on another card, you really don't have control over that. So don't even mess with the auto advance. It just like keeps going through the cards, cycling through them automatically. That's not good. Your easy days, this is a really new setting. This wasn't in the video that I made last year, so I would not recommend messing around with this until you have a good grasp of Anki, you're religious about it, you have a routine, right? Because what this does is, let's say I don't really want to do cards on Fridays, right? I can kind of turn this slider down to like space my cards around my free day. So if I know and I let Anki know that, hey, Fridays are my free days, I don't want to do a whole bunch of cards on Fridays, right? Then maybe it'll give me a few extra cards on Thursday, a few extra cards on Saturday. That way my Friday load is a little less. More than welcome to experiment with this. I would just keep it as normal now until you kind of figure your way around things. And then lastly, your maximum interval here and your advanced stuff. It says advanced, but realistically, I think this is very important to kind of look at here. The maximum interval just lets you know, like, okay, what is the longest period of time that I can just throw a card out into oblivion, right? 1,825 days is a little bonkers. So I think 240 or 180 would be more realistic, right? So either seeing the cards like maximum 6 months to 8 months, right, pushed out, I think would be best. And so that's kind of the thing, right, that you want to go ahead and make sure that you're making sure that the maximum interval is more realistic, right? You don't want to push a card out to like 3 years from now. It'd be better if you kind of kept it to, a few months or something, right? Especially once you get to like board studying, you want to push your cards out farther and farther for long-term retention, as opposed to like, seeing like a million cards a day. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. For your maximum interval, I would recommend 180 to 240 days. That would be, the maximum amount of time that I would just push that card out. So in other words, like if I hit this card and I get it right, I easy it like a million times, right? I would only be able to push it out to 8 months, 240 days, right? I wouldn't be able to push it out farther than that. Now, if I get the card wrong, it resets, the limits, and I kind of build back up. But yeah, and then historical retention, we just keep it at 90%. So we're chill there, and we can go ahead and save, right? We still see here that this is 36, right? And this is 20 for Y1. You might be a little confused again. We'll go ahead and look at the options for Y1, because remember we did for AnkiHub, or for AnKing, right? We have the day limits as 9999. So we can deem, different settings for this one. So we'll go ahead and adjust this again. Right, good. We'll do this one as well. 15 minutes, 15 for this one. And then let's see here, this would be ascending position, new card sort order. We would do order gathered. For your new reviews, you would show the new cards after reviews. Then you show your learning cards before reviews, and it's due date then random. FSRS is enabled. We want to bury the sibling cards. We don't mess around with the timing or the auto advance, and you can see here the maximum interval is like 36,000 something, so we don't want that. Let's keep it around 240, for example. And we can go ahead and save, and you can see here bumped it up to, you know, the maximum card limit. Once again, you might be wondering, this is 36. What the heck is going on? Well, that's because we have not suspended or unsuspended everything yet, right? So tags are basically ways that you can categorize and organize the cards that you have. So for your AnKing step 1, step 2, step 3, what we want to do is go ahead and let's start with step 3. We want to select all of these cards and let's flag them as a color. Let's do turquoise. Step 2, we're going to go ahead and flag all of these. We're going to select all, right click on it, right, and then we'll flag these as orange. And then step 1, we're going to go ahead and flag these as pink, for example, right? So then I see that all my step 1 cards are in pink. If I scroll down a fair amount, I can see all these cards in pink, right? For step 2, I can see that some of them are pink because step 1, step 2, step 3 will overlap a lot of the content. And then let's see here. Good. So that's all taken care of. That's what we want to do. Excellent, right? So now the idea is that we want to go ahead and start unsuspending cards. Whenever you want to go through these AnKing flashcards, let's say you watched a Boards and Beyond video, which is BNB, right? And you watched a video on cardio, anatomy and physiology, cardiac anatomy. You click on it, right? These are all the cards. It's 61 cards. You can see here. Here's the number of cards. You can select these, and then you can click toggle suspend. That unsuspends them, right? And if we go back, we'll see here that we initially had what? It was 36 cards. We added 61. Now we have 97, right? Now, if I were to go ahead and unsuspend every step 1 card ever, select all of these, and I right click and I toggle unsuspend, then this is where I get my 99999, right? Realistically, don't unsuspend everything. Just unsuspend the ones corresponding to the videos or the tags that you need. So if you looked at something on Boards and Beyond, or let's say for boot camp, for example, you can unsuspend based on the video that you watched, right? So that's the idea with AnKing. This is how you can unlock cards and start to go through them. But yeah, and then if I were to click study on anything, right, and I click my space bar, I can see here that my default, like I said, for my learning steps, I put 15 minutes. It puts hard as 23 minutes, good as 3 days, easy as 15, right? So it starts off like crazy, but then let's say, obviously this is a new card, I've never seen it before. I'm gonna click again, right? It's gonna start to adjust those settings and those intervals based on, you know, whether you get the card right or wrong, how many times you get it right or wrong, etc., etc. But that just about covers, you know, the AnKing as well. And we should be good to go. And you can see here that we have all 35,000 some cards, so that's good. So we are in business. Like I said, you go through these tags, your step 1, V12, pull up the content that you want to go through, if it's sketchy, if it's boot camp, whatever, and then that's how you kind of go through things. I wouldn't worry about the extra stuff here, these other tags. But that's the gist. And like I said, for editing cards, you can go ahead and like, you know, edit cards here. That's totally fine. The editing, adding cards and stuff, like I said, is in another video. I have the link to that in the description as well. And yeah, and you can add images and whatnot. I show how to do all that in the separate video, but that kind of should cover just about everything. For your add-ons, remember, we have a list of add-ons that Abby made, and that will help you kind of get the essential ones, and we'll talk about that in the meeting as well. But otherwise, I think that covers just about all I wanted to cover for setting up Anki. I really hope this was helpful. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to kind of go in more detail and more depth with any of this as needed. But yeah, so just comment, let me know if there's any specific questions you have as well. Shoot me a text, whatever it is. But yeah, thanks so much. Hope this is helpful. Peace.